Saddle up. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Good Lawgic. I am your host, Joe Neerman. Tonight, I bring back my favorite guest, my father, Dr. Yaakov Tzvi Neerman, who's also a rabbi, in case you're wondering. And his doctorate, for those of you who are new to the show, is in medieval Arab Christian relations. Correct me.
That's
Dad.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right. Muslim Christian relations. Yes.
Muslim Christian relations. So, with that, I welcome you back. Welcome back, Dad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, because
my son asked
before you let me just. I apologize, Daddy. I'm going to let you talk. My father's probably going to do the majority of the talking tonight. I'm going to sit back and sip soup while he talks to you guys, and because that's the most popular way for me to run this. So I'm only doing this now so everyone remembers that it's my show, because an hour from now you're not going to remember. So, because he's great, thank God. He's
that's not true.
But So my father is he's the one who taught me from my formative years to understand about different mindsets of different peoples and how those differences affect their attitudes and ways of dealing with life. And he taught me more about Christianity than I think many Christians know. And he also, just as far as origins of different elements of the religious the religious manifestations of various holidays and things of that nature. And that's because, he spent a great deal of time studying things that few of us have studied. He is a historian, as was my mother, rest her soul. And he has been an invaluable addition to the show in the past, particularly when we talk about foreign relations, because as my parents have always told me, that history gives us insight into the future and what the present and the future. So with that, I asked my father on here so we can sort of catch up while I'm taking a break for Ghislaine Maxwell until I resume tomorrow, to catch up about what's going on in America, in particular, as it relates to foreign relations and things of that nature. So the floor is yours, Dad.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before I go out of America, I want to talk about America for a couple of minutes, because I believe that what's happening here really affects foreign affairs on many levels. I would also like to express a general concern that I have, and this concern is based on developments in ancient Rome, developments when the Nazis seized power, developments when the communists seized power in 1917. And it is something that I'm not going to say that necessarily anything terrible, God forbid, would happen. And we have had times in the past when the situation was very, very bad in America. But I would like to say that there are three general conditions that tend to lead to governments falling or having great difficulty in maintaining themselves. Number one, if there's wildness, if there are riots, if there are troubles, and these are left to fester. It's like a sore that is allowed to grow, and it grows. And we see even based on some news reports that there are people who now organize these break-ins into fancy stores on the internet, setting it up. You go there and we'll sell the merchandise. So in other words, this stuff is becoming on a small level at the moment, and hopefully it won't go any further, institutionalized. And from what I hear, the Democrats now are reacting to it. So that's a good thing. But if it doesn't stop, if there is general lawlessness, then what happens? People get weapons. They want to protect themselves. And I heard a report recently that the gun sales have doubled and tripled in certain areas. People are buying weapons. Now, so this already comes to stage 2, meaning that people want to defend themselves. Now, once you have general lawlessness, people who are not involved in this, many of them are going to say, we will accept anything that stops it. And then the risk is they will accept a dictator type individual or a situation of dictatorship. For example, if in New York City they can mandate that we go out with masks and we can be arrested if we don't, or in California, possibly also, this is something that could lead people psychologically to accept being dominated by the government. And that is also a problem here. And this is the kind of phenomena.
If I can interject that for a moment. I would bet anything you never saw the movie V for Vendetta, did you?
No.
Okay, so that movie was premised on a dystopian future. The setting was in England sometime, I don't know, later this century, which basically was displaying a conservative-based authoritarianship, where they were basically hunting various gays or other minorities, and there was a similar type of dystopian where the hero, who just went by V, so he was fighting back and exposing the corruption of authoritarianism. But it's a lot like what you're describing here, where there's just sort of like these dominoes get set into play. I mean, you're talking about how that is already set when the authoritarian government is set up. But I think a lot of people always assume that the V scenario of it being in a conservative area, conservative dominated authoritarianism, that's how it would unfold. But we're actually seeing the exact opposite, where it seems to be that it's from the left-wing perspective, that they're the ones who seem to be seeking to take authoritarian control by creating a dystopian world where criminality is not penalized. If anything, it's enabled by the government, failure to prosecute in certain laws, and setting up divides between the people, which then you have constant protests, which many of them turn into riots. You have a media which is covering it as if everything is totally fine, which is saying, don't believe your eyes, believe what I'm telling you. And then when you have an election which is carried out in ways that, no matter how you define it, lacks transparency in its integrity. Even assuming it was had complete integrity, there's a lack of transparency where we can all see the results in a way that makes people feel confident. And then you have a siege on the Capitol, which all of a sudden now leads to this need for more authoritarian control, have those harsh punishments on those who set foot inside the Capitol and things of that nature. And so what you're describing here, we're seeing it play out. Like, it's like we're actually watching it play out from the reverse angle of that movie into our lives, what you're describing with respect to these 3 steps. So there was a thought that came to my mind while you were discussing this.
I'm not surprised. If you examine in detail what happened in 1917 in Russia, how first you had a provisional government and they couldn't keep order properly. And of course, the communists promised peace, bread, and land. The idea being that the soldiers wouldn't have to keep dying on the front lines. And the word had gotten back that the situation was terrible. Now, that's one piece of it. There's something else very interesting. I heard a news report. I'll say it on Mark Levin, or Levin, he calls himself, which I had read about before, but he put it very graphically. During World War II, we all know that 6 million Jews and several millions of others, and perhaps as many as 3 to 4, were murdered by the Nazis. This officially did not come out until after the war. but it is clear that many people knew about it, and the media, and I'm not going to give a list of the media, they mentioned, of course, the most famous, shall we say, member of the media, the one who is very left today, and knew about it and put some of the details minimally on page 5 when they belonged on page 1. So again, if you have the cooperation of the media, things are tabled and they go forward the way the government or whoever is working with the media likes it, unless there is a voice that comes out and can call them, so to speak. And that, by the way, is one of the advantages of the internet to some extent. Well, the internet, of course, is used the other way by bad people too. It's used to recruit terrorists, and it was used to recruit the robbers in one of these big break-ins recently. But I really would not like to dwell on this. I wanted to talk more about foreign affairs. And as bad as this could be, I'm more concerned about foreign affairs. And several reasons. First of all, because most people aren't, and they don't realize how serious the situation could be. And I pray it isn't. In fact, on the Day of Atonement, when we believe the world is judged, I actually pray, and have done this for a number of years, that there will not be a nuclear holocaust. Because if a few people were to push a few buttons at the wrong time in the wrong way, as this broadcast had begun, by now, God forbid, we could all be immolated. This is a serious issue. And by the way, don't think you'll have warning, because there won't, because there's no reason to give you warning, and certainly the government would not give you warning. What they would try to do is shelter a few people if they could, and I doubt that that would be possible. So I would like to examine a few issues in foreign affairs that are of concern, and one in particular, which could, God forbid, lead to a serious confrontation. The issues I want to talk about for the next few minutes, I don't know about 2 hours, but the next few minutes, and then if you would like, I'll try to fend off questions or field questions. All right. In any event, thank you, whoever sent that signal. All right. The bottom line is these are the areas which are of concern. And one of them I only found out about recently. The one that I, of course, knew all along was Iran. And I've mentioned this before in this broadcast. The other two are the Ukraine and Taiwan. And the fourth one is North Korea, which, if the Chinese take North Korea, which is what is being talked about now about the Koreans, it would not be very good, but it is of, I think, less concern than anything else in the other three.
Why is that less of a concern than them taking Taiwan first?
All right. Well, first of all, Taiwan is a major player in the world economy, which, of course, North Korea is not. Strategically, it's very, very important. But since you mentioned Taiwan, I might as well tell you, my first wife, may she rest in peace, Good Logic's mama, she and I often talked. She had studied Chinese, and she monitored China. As they say, she was a China watcher. And there was one message that resonated with her, and she always said this: the only thing about which the communists and the nationalists, the people in Taiwan, that means, the only thing they agree upon is that Taiwan is a part of China. That's the only thing they agree upon. And in fact, up until the 60s, and I don't remember the exact date, unfortunately, communist China was not represented in the UN. Taiwan was represented as China was Taiwan. The Taiwanese representatives were there. And there was no move when the Taiwanese were basically thrown out so that the communists could come in. There was no move even to say Taiwan is a separate place, because deep down the Chinese believe that Taiwan is part of China. So for the Chinese to have these overflights and to be positioning themselves to invade Taiwan is not a shock. The question is how the government would respond. It's also the question is what could be done beforehand to inhibit this? And that brings us back to the Ukraine.
Can I ask you if
yes.
you're familiar? Because I don't know the history, and I know this was more Mom's area. The Southeast Asia was much more Mom's focused than yours. But I am curious if you are familiar. Like, what is the history that leads both China and Taiwan to recognize Taiwan as being part of China? And if indeed it is a part of China, then who are we to, historically, and who are we to say otherwise?
Well, from what I know, and again, I do not know too much, from what I know of this, Taiwan was historically a part of China. At one point, the Japanese conquered it from the Chinese, and they called it Formosa, and it was called Formosa when I was young, very young. And basically, what occurred after 49, there was a civil war between the Kuomintang, which was the Nationalist Party, and the Communists. At one point, the Communists earlier had been chased. They went on what was known as the Long March, and they came back, and they worked with the peasants. They got the peasants to side with them by being very nice to the peasants, which is a standard thing that the Communists had done in Russia initially. And what occurred was in the Civil War, that Chiang Kai-shek lost the war, and he fled to Taiwan. And therefore, he controlled Taiwan. The Communists were in no position at that point to capture Taiwan. So Taiwan became, we had recognized the Kuomintang. So at that point, Taiwan was China officially. And that is the way, right, okay. Now here I see someone is saying Taiwan is a part of China. It is an island that hosts the only legitimate government of China. Okay, well, I happen to think you have a good point there, but how do you determine the legitimate government of China? That's a very interesting question, and it's really beyond the scope.
I don't really know what that means. I mean, what you're going to say?
Legitimate. What's legitimate?
You're saying this CCP is illegitimate?
He's saying that. He's saying that. Most people, I don't think, would say that, honestly. I mean, certainly Chinese living in Taiwan might say that, but I don't think that many people would say that today. And certainly what is recognized today, the communists are recognized. It took us until 1933 to recognize the Russians, the communists in Russia.
I'm not saying
the government, but they're ruling. The communists are ruling China. They're also ruling Tibet.
No one should mistakenly take what I'm saying as an implication that communism is anything short of terrible, terrible evil.
Oh, it's a horrible system.
That does not. But I think there are a lot of governments that could be fairly deemed legitimate, even though they are evilly run. I think that what Stalin had, what was a legitimate government, certainly, it's at its outset, in that it was recognized by the people of Russia. And just because they ran in an evil way, I don't know that makes an illegitimate government. So, I guess
what do you call it? Right, exactly. Stalin and Mao each were responsible for more deaths than Adolf Hitler. Deaths of people. Right. Stalin, before World War II, killed some numbers as high as 20 million. I don't think it was that many, but close, kulaks, peasants, wealthy peasants, in order to collectivize. He also destroyed his general staff. And
what's a wealthy peasant?
Most of the guys above the rank of captain, which is one of the reasons the Russians suffered terribly in World War II initially.
What is a wealthy peasant, Dad?
The kulaks were peasants that early on the communists let them sell stuff and collect some land and get money. That is how they got their support. And then they turned on them. There's an old adage which comes from the French Revolution, is the revolution devours its children. And I think that AOC and her gang should remember this. But they don't know any history, probably.
I don't think any of them had kids.
But no, it doesn't mean literally children. It means they, as the revolution gets more. I mean, if you examine the French Revolution, the Gironde, which was the leftist in the National Assembly in 1789, but 1794, most of them are executed or are in hiding.
It's a good question to ask the squad. You have Ayanna Presley, AOC, Ilhan Omar. Which one of you is Trotsky? Which one of you is the one that's going to get beheaded at some point? I'm just want to under your
wasn't
world
quite
vision.
Beheaded, but his head was crushed. Anyway, yeah. Well, all right. So coming back, my concern is this. When we examine the policies of President Trump projected strength and projected a policy that showed he knew what he was doing. Now, the current administration, with the fiasco in Afghanistan and other things, does not project strength. Now, this is a problem, and I'll explain why. I'm going to again go back now to late 30s. It's very, very interesting. And there's a book I recommend. It's called 1941, the year Germany lost the war. I just read the book. Actually, 3 weeks ago, I finished the book. And there's a couple of very interesting points that come from that book and from other books on World War II. It is well known that Chamberlain at Munich appeased Hitler by giving him the Sudetenland, which is the western part of Czechoslovakia, which is in the mountains, could be easily defended, and had the manufacturing. It was the plum part of Czechoslovakia. And he gave it over, and quote unquote, peace in our time. And Winston Churchill made a very powerful speech damning him, or damning what he'd done. And that was correct. Now, let's go to Germany. Before this appeasement, before Munich, there was a move among the German general staff to get rid of Adolf Hitler. And once Hitler got the western half of Czechoslovakia, he became so popular that the generals said they couldn't do anything, and they went along with him. But more than that, and
you're saying when they first went into Poland, that there was
not Poland, Czechoslovakia. I'm not that.
Before he went to Poland.
This is in September of 39. Not September 1st of 4. I'm 38. I apologize. 38. September of 38. I'm sorry. The other is September 1st of 39.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, right. Sorry. Okay. Now, excuse me. Hitler told Goebbels and Goering that after he made, there was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
Just by the way, to answer your question, not your question here, but someone asked this question. It's pronounced Zvi, like TZV. Zvi. Yeah,
that's how if you know German, like the word Zeit in German, Tsetse fly. All right. Tsetse fly. Okay.
And by the way, while my father's talking, I'm actually about to put up a poll, which is totally irrelevant to this show and the topic at hand, but it's relevant to conversations I've been having with other liberal show hosts as I've been exposing myself to other ideologies and having healthy dialogue / debate with other liberals who have followings on Twitter. And I was talking to one about bringing him on the show here. So I'm going to put up a poll here about whether people would want to watch me debate a liberal show host on a channel here, or whether it's not something that's appealing to them. So I'm going to ask my audience to just try and answer the poll, but that's not related to anything my father's talking about here. So,
okay. So in any event, Hitler confided. He said when he invaded the western half of Poland, that Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact basically was that there was a mutual defense pact. And basically, the secret clause was they're going to divide Poland between them. And then Hitler had been told that England and France would go to war if he invaded Poland. I'm not saying the generals, but he was not convinced they would do it fully at all. He spoke with some of his closest associates, I think, as I said, Goering and also Goebbels, and confided, look, when I took first I took the western part of Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland, then I took the eastern part of Czechoslovakia. These guys really, I don't think they're going to go to war. See, he didn't think they'd go to war. He figured he could get more and more. That was a mistake, obviously, and that psychology could apply here. When you have a president who is, it looks as if, we'll leave it with that, and it appears to his enemies that he is weak, whatever he says on the phone with Putin or Xi, whatever he says to them, I don't think they believe him, because they look at him and they see him as weak. They also, I think, see him as perhaps not 100% there. And they figure, look, so we can push. Now, when you're pushing with Ukraine, and they already have soldiers on the border of Ukraine, if he's pushing there, so what happens if he threatens a nuclear response? Let's say he threatens that. Now, here's the problem. They're not going to believe him. So what happens next? Does he do a nuclear response? And God forbid if he does. And I'm not saying we should give them back to Ukraine, although they think the Ukraine is theirs. It's been theirs for 250 years. But the bottom line of that is, let me finish, please.
Okay.
The bottom line of that is that if there's an exchange over that, whatever. Now, let me finish what I want to say. I have a very interesting piece here that I want to interject, if I may, just so that my voice doesn't get stale from not talking for too long. So, I also give you a little breather. So, all right.
What I take from what you're saying here is that you were talking about how criminals are sort of emboldened by the lack of aggression from the government. And you gave an example of how that emboldened Hitler to try and push. And I think we can all understand that. It's almost like any child who's sort of testing boundaries, saying, what can I get away with before I'm going to get my hand slapped by someone? There's a bigger bully in the room, but if they're just preoccupied or don't care about who it is that I'm abusing, I'm the second biggest bully. I can basically run wild and do whatever it is I want, because he's not going to serve as a protector with any sort of genuine actual force. And what you're describing with with Russia and Ukraine, so I personally think that Russia is overstated as a boogeyman. I think that Putin is overstated as being a boogeyman. I think that this is the same guy who was in charge in 2012, when Obama said that they're not a really big geopolitical threat, and he thought Romney was a joke for claiming that they were. And I think that a lot of our media has geared us toward hating Russia and thinking of them as being some evil country, when they actually have some legitimacy to their perspectives as to how the breakup of the USSR had certain terms associated with it as to what was going to happen with the riches of the natural resources in the Ukraine, and that Russia was really supposed to get first dibs on it before it started going to Europe.
She wasn't supposed to join NATO either. That was part of the deal.
And all these different things. It's like, look, we're breaking up on these conditions, and then Ukraine basically breached the deal, and they wanted to deal directly with the EU. It was the EU's benefit to cut Russia out. So basically, the EU, all our friends in NATO, they're all saying, well, we don't like Russia. We don't want Russia to be in the way of us doing business directly with Ukraine. So Russia is evil for trying to basically enforce a contract that Russia had made with Ukraine when they first split up. So now you have Ukraine stiffing Russia, and the entire world looking at Russia and Putin saying, you're so evil for trying to control Ukraine, when Russia's like, who the hell are you? Well, I don't care about your stupid opinions. This is a deal we had. There's no world judge to sit down here and say that Putin is right. But if you actually looked at the claims of each side here, Russia has, from a contractual perspective, far stronger claims than the rest of the world, including our friends in NATO sitting in the EU. But it's not politically comfortable for us to basically turn our friends and say, you guys are wrong. So we side with our friends rather than side with perhaps what was arguably fair and appropriate. Next thing you know, it's like we're trying to protect Ukraine from Russia when Russia has justifiable beef about the way this whole thing went down. Part of it is that people don't like Putin because he's very anti-gay. So, which, came out with the Olympics and things of that nature. So the media in general is not going to be a big fans of Putin. And all of a sudden now we're looking at Russia like this is a country we need to go to war with because they're actually trying to uphold, to force Ukraine to basically honor agreements that enabled Ukraine to go free from Russia in the first place. So I can understand why Putin and Russia are basically like, you guys are all wrong, and I'm not backing down. And Putin is sufficiently alpha that if he sees someone who's a beta like Biden or whoever, he doesn't respect their perspectives. He thinks that it's unjustifiable where they're coming from. And we're all trained by the media to basically think Russia, evil Russia, evil Russia, evil Russia, without questioning why it is that for the first time that over the last 5-10 years, all of a sudden now Russia's so evil when for 20 years they were like, totally good friends of ours. And we don't question that. It's just like, oh yeah, Russia's always been so evil. Remember back to the 50s, where the Cold War. Remember Stalin, how they're so evil, and it's really ridiculous. It's really ridiculous, and it's bothersome to me that this has become something that now we're basically siding with NATO and the EU when the EU is wrong. They're in the wrong, but because they're our friends, we're siding with them and basically ignoring morality and dismissing morality or fairness and justice in favor of looking out for our buddies in Europe.
Okay.
So now that's my take on it. If you disagree, and you're free to disagree, as and correct me.
I don't exactly disagree.
If I'm wrong factually, I want you to please correct me because I will defer to you on facts if I'm mistaken on anything here.
Well, first of all, let me start off by saying I'm not an expert in this. Second of all, though, I'm going to tell you something about which I know a little bit. All right, and again, it's not always the same. It depends on the leadership. In 1973, there was a war in the Middle East. And the war was between the Arabs and the Israelis. It's known in America generally and among Jews as the Yom Kippur War. And it's known among the Arabs as the Ramadan War. Basically, on Yom Kippur, the Arabs attacked Israel on two fronts. In Syria, attacked in the Golan Heights in the north, and Egypt attacked on the south, and Israel won the war. There are a number of reasons why. We're not going to get into that now, but I am more interested in something else. The question came when Israel was really winning the war, and she had trapped the Egyptian Third Army. The army was trapped, and it was a very interesting question. What should be done? And Henry Kissinger was pressing that, he was the Secretary of State then, he was pressing for peace, stop ceasefire, etc., and so forth. Now, that was a time when Nixon was in the hot seat because Watergate had exploded, and Nixon was very nervous, and some say he was agonizing and agitated and totally distracted during that. In spite of that, by the way, when Israel needed planes during the war, he had American planes sent to Israel. They painted over the American insignia, and they put Jewish stars on them when they landed on the ground, and up they went, and that was very important to Israel. And one of the greatest rabbis then alive made a comment on that in spite of whatever he has done personally and in the government for saving Israel, the good Lord will send him to heaven. And that was a comment once made because it was very important. But that's not why I'm mentioning this. I am mentioning this because something happened. It was very quiet at the time. If you want, I'll explain it, good logic, or if not, you'll explain it, DEFCON. You know what this is, right? I assume.
You can, yes, I'm familiar. I saw War Games, but you can.
Right. Okay, all right. Well, it's not only War Games. All right, okay. Sure. It's not a game. All right. Maybe that movie was a game, but it's not a game. All right. DEFCON means there are 5 levels of DEFCON. DEFCON 1 is, God forbid, we're blown up. That's DEFCON 1.
Is it? I thought it went the other way. I thought it goes up to 5, not down to 1. At least in the movie. And my recollection of the movie is that, like, we're normally in DEFCON 1, and then it goes up to, like, when you get DEFCON 4, that's like the last step of 4.
No, it's not.
I'm mistaken?
According to the notes I have, it's the exact opposite.
Okay.
Because on several occasions, we've gone to DEFCON 5, which is really almost normal. And we even went to DEFCON 4. I think we're at DEFCON 4 in the Cuba Missile Crisis. And by the way, when the Cuba Missile Crisis occurred, at that time, I was like 19, and we were scared. We were terrified we'd have no future, that the world was going to be blown up. We really were afraid with that. And you know who blinked? Nikita Khrushchev blinked. He blinked. And he took the missiles out of Cuba. In any event, though, here, there was a whole, they were upgrading, and they were talking on the phone, and Kissinger actually, and Haig, who was Alexander Haig, who at that time, Haig was the White House chief of staff, and he was a real hawk, and he was talking to the Russians, and they said, look, we don't want a war over this, but you better not come in on the side of the Arabs. And the bottom line was that after that conversation, they went to DEFCON. These are the words in the notes, and I got this from a reliable source. They went from 4 to 3. So 3 is a higher level.
Right, okay.
To increase the DEFCON from 4 to 3, I have here. All right. So now, and then, of course, they went back, and there was nothing happened because the Russians backed down. This is what they said, though, and it's very interesting. The Soviets quickly detected the increased American defense condition and were astonished and bewildered at the response. Who can have imagined Americans would be so easily frightened, said Nikolai Podgorny. It is not reasonable to become engaged in a war with the United States because of Egypt and Syria. So the question is it reasonable to be engaged in a war with the Soviet Union over the Ukraine? I mean, obviously the Ukraine is closer to Russia. It's of much more interest to Russia than Egypt and Syria. But still, and I think that Putin is going to say yes, so they're not going to do anything. He's going to bluster, and I think they're going to go in. What obviously he should do now is beef up the Ukraine without going in if he wants to defend the Ukraine. And the reason he should beef up the Ukraine is not because of the Ukraine. I am not an aficionado of the Ukraine for many reasons, including the fact that up until Adolf Hitler killed 6 million Jews between 1648 and 1649, 200,000 plus Jews were murdered in the Ukraine. And one of the nice things they did to pregnant Jewish ladies was to split them apart and sew a cat in place of the fetus. We have this.
Oh my God.
Yeah. All right. So I can't be over in love with this, especially when I walked in 1965 into the pavilion and they had a life-size cutout of the man who led that business. All right.
Khmelnytsky. Is that Khmelnytsky?
Khmelnytsky. Yes. Khmelnytsky. Yeah.
Yeah, you're chuckling again. You're chuckling again. So
sorry, I got excited. Okay. I got excited. I'm sorry because I get excited over these things. Okay. Anyway.
So yeah. Wasn't that in Poland though? Wasn't that in Poland? Wasn't that in Poland?
No, it's Ukraine. It's Ukraine. But you have to understand something about Poland also. Poland in those days, Poland in the 1649 was very big, but it was the Cossacks that did it, and it's Ukraine today. The Cossacks and that territory, ultimately, the height of Poland geographically was during that period, and that was a time when Russia was relatively weak. And it's in the 18th century that Catherine the Great, the 3 partitions of Poland, they wiped Poland off the map, and then Poland's put back on the map after World War I. on the Congress of their side. But all right, that's off the topic completely.
I'm never going to forget the day my dad came on my YouTube and described people sewing cats into pregnant women. That's
I'm sorry if I shouldn't have.
That's okay. No, that's okay. You know what? It brings in the ratings. So there you go.
I didn't do it for that. All right, what did I tell you?
I know
sorry
you didn't. I know you didn't, Dad. You're still chuckling though. So like, okay.
All right.
So,
okay. No. All right. I'm tired. That's why I'm moving. All right. Anyway, so but what I'm saying is, it's also the posture of the United States. It's also the posture of defending Taiwan, protecting Taiwan. We should send more supplies and equipment to Taiwan. We should do things in order to show the communists in China that we really don't want them knocking out Taiwan. And the truth of the matter is, the fact that these two gentlemen, and maybe I use the word loosely, they were conferring, they had a summit. The two of them, I think they may try to be coordinating something. Meanwhile, we have North Korea. The reason I mentioned North Korea is I saw a very nice, there's a Korean lady, and I didn't even know about this. I stumbled into this on YouTube, and she has a program with talking about North Korea. And and by the way, I will tell you, I learned this also from his mother, from Good Logic's mother, that in the Orient, little things can indicate a lot. In other words, who is standing where means something in China. Now, she pointed out something which I would never have thought of, but it hit me when she said it was correct, this lady. She said that, of course, they always, when the leader claps, they all clap. And there's one woman who didn't clap, who's
this is where?
In North Korea.
Uh-huh.
In North Korea. And this woman's not clapping. You would think that she'd disappear quickly, and she didn't. And the thinking is that he's very sick. The Kim is very sick, and that it's not stable. And if it's really not stable, to say that China won't come in there is unlikely. Remember, back in the Korean War, we were at Thanksgiving. The soldiers were a few miles from the Yalu River, which is the northern boundary of North Korea. And they were saying by December 25th, all the guys are going to come home. And suddenly the Chinese invaded and pushed them out, pushed the Americans out. The whole China sent a huge army in there, the communists, and they pushed us back. And that's why we have a divided Korea today. So the Chinese did not want a democratic state in Korea, North Korea. And the Chinese, according to her, and it makes sense, would be very happy annexing North Korea. That's not just a puff at North Korea. Also, that way they know you don't have a crazy guy with his finger on a nuclear button and missiles that could send them theoretically to the United States. So
can we pause for a moment, Dad, while I get some super chats here?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so mad.org is saying the unspeakable doc on YouTube, lawyers behind it, LC for 911.org, have ongoing grand jury in Southern New York City, 18 USC 3332. Are you aware of this? Keep up the great reporting. I'm not sure what you're asking about. When I saw this super chat, I actually opened up that statute, and this is just standard power, 18 USC 1332. If I open this up here, you're going to see this is just powers and duties. It should be the duty of each grand duty impaneled within any judicial district to inquire into offenses against criminal laws of the United States alleged to have been committed. So this is just basic grand jury duty for federal. So I'm not sure what. I'm not familiar with the Unspeakable Act, but I did pull that up because you made that specific request. I'm not familiar with the document you're talking about. Your reference seems to be to general grand jury, not to this particular unspeakable doc. So sorry I can't help you with that. Did my best though. Next question. The next comment here is I listen to Yaakov while I drink Smirnoff, Mr. Zamboni. And
I'm sorry
Z. Michael
if you need to drink because it's so bad what I'm saying. I don't mean.
I think he's
not
no.
correct,
I
but
think he's saying.
scary.
I don't know if Smirnoff is a reference to like Russian alcohol specifically. I don't think it's anything that you're making him, or maybe he's depressed when he hears you talk about our future. I don't know, or it could just be he's chilling. It really could go any of those ways. Z. Michael Gelke says the analysis is excellent, but it's missing the realization that BLM and Hong Kong riots were the opening salvos of this war by Chinese and U.S. Special Forces. World War III already has fifth-generation fire. I'm not sure what you mean by fifth-generation fire. I don't know what
sure
that
I get
means.
this. I'm sorry, I don't really.
But I guess what he's saying is that these were all like different wag the dog type of things.
There was
with respect.
But I don't think that Hong Kong was staged. I doubt it. Hong Kong was used to freedom under the Brits. When the Brits made the 99-year lease, no one was 99 years was forever back then, just in the 1800s, and they never thought of this. Yeah.
And L. Jones, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. All right. I'm sorry to cut you off, Dad. I just didn't want to fall behind here. And by the way, any of you who want to support on Venmo.com/good Lawgic. So that would that I look for those first. And yes, whatever joke it was, it totally flew over my head. Sorry. That happens.
All right. I would the only other thing I really would mention.
Mr. Zamboni said I missed his super chat. Give me one second. I want to try and find that, because if I missed his super chat, I want to try and rectify that before I'll forget about it later. So let me just go back. Let me just grab that real quick. Sorry about cutting you off, Dad.
No, it's fine.
So he says, oh yeah, I showed it on the screen, but I didn't read it off, where he basically said Good Logic's face looks like every son's face when they sit through an hour-long life lesson by their dad. In all seriousness, I lost mine in all seriousness, I lost mine 4 years ago. You're blessed, Joe. God bless both men here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I agree. I'm very blessed. So please continue that.
All right. The only other thing, I mean, that I really wanted to mention is this. Iran. Iran is dangerous. And, thank you. Okay. That's
Yanli Park.
Breck Nichols. Thank you, Breck Nichols. Okay.
And thank you, Breck Nichols, who became a member.
That's right. That is the name. Now I see the name. Yes.
Breck Nichols became a member tonight, so I wanted to just acknowledge that as well. Thank you, Breck. By the way, when you were describing that whole thing with the clapping, I recall seeing or reading this thing about Stalin, where he would come into a room. There was a story told over. He came into this thing where he was introduced, and the audience stood up and applauded, and it was almost as if they felt compelled to continue applauding. And this continued for minute after minute, for 8 minutes, out of fear that whoever in the audience would be the first one to stop applauding for Stalin would be removed and killed. And then for 8 minutes, the entire audience was applauding until finally one person stopped.
Do this. You do want to hear something very interesting? This reminds you of something else. Saddam Hussein, when he was in power back in the 80s, this was, Saddam Hussein decided to purge a number of generals and upper-ranking officers. So he assembled all of them in a room, and he called out the name of someone. He brought him up to the stage, and he said, "Go over there." And this is what I read. Maybe it wasn't exactly like this. And you hear, bang, there's a shot. And Saddam Hussein goes like this. Starts to applaud. And of course, all of them start to applaud. Then he calls another one. And he did this with quite a few people. so you are forced to sit there applauding that you may be shot next. This is how dictators work.
It's freaky.
This is what happens in totalitarian states. And again, one thing I did, by the way, before I mention Iran, one thing I did not mention that scares me terribly. And to do this, I'm going to have to take you back to Louis XIV. And you can look at me and laugh, but
before you go to Louis XIV, let me just get to another couple of quick super chats.
Okay, sure.
This is a follow-up. Fifth generation warfare is a term. You'll have to Google it for more info, but I think people underestimate information warfare happening today.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, yeah. Of course, information warfare. That's obvious.
And one last one. So L. Jones says, your father's referring to Yami Park. Her channel is Voice of North Korea. You should check out her channel. Really enjoying listening to your father tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. When you were in high school, you were probably taught that Louis XIV was an absolute ruler. Now, he was absolute. Where was he absolute? In Versailles, the palace he built, which I tell my students is a Venus flytrap, because he brought in the nobility there and kept them there doing stupid jobs in order to...
you keep going, Dad. I'm just pulling up different chats. Don't worry.
All right. And basically, he did that in order to make sure that they wouldn't make trouble. But why did he need to do that to make sure they wouldn't make trouble? Because although he had absolute authority, he did not have absolute power. You can have authority, but in order to have power, you have to execute the authority. Now, Hitler had tremendous power because he had much more technology than Louis XIV. Much more. Hitler's technology compared to the technology that exists today was minuscule. Today, they can park a truck, or I don't even know if they need a truck, something outside of your house and listen to everything you say to your wife, your kids. Today, everything on your cell phone is recorded and goes into a huge database somewhere out in, I believe it's in New Mexico. Everything I say is recorded. It goes out there. If, God forbid, a totalitarian person or authority takes over this country, breaking out of that would be, by force, would be virtually impossible because of the technology. The technology is what is so scary. That makes it scary. I will tell you one thing, the story which I like very much, because it shows something else which counters this a little bit. It's a beautiful story, and then maybe we'll go to Iran after that. I love this story. You may remember, everyone remembers the name Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter had a special assistant by the name of Harding Carter. Now, Harding Carter was, you also may remember there was an Iranian hostage crisis. The American diplomats from Tehran were imprisoned by the Iranians. We couldn't get them out. But when Reagan was coming in, he said he's going to get them out. And the Iranian government was terrified of him because he projected real power. And Carter didn't. So you now have Harding Carter, special assistant to President Jimmy Carter, on the 20th of January at 11-something in the morning, late in the 11th hour, on the phone with the general, what's going on with the hostages. And the general is reporting to him, and Carter goes, General, I'll be back to you in a few minutes. And this is in his book. If you get a hold of his memoirs, you'll be able to read this. He calls back about, I don't know, 3 minutes after 12, whatever it was, a few minutes shortly after 12. And this is the conversation. General, what's going on? Mr. Carter, sir, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. What do you mean you can't tell me? 10 minutes ago, we were talking about this, or whatever minutes ago. Talking about it. He says, but I can't tell you now. What do you mean? He says, well, 10 minutes ago, you were a special assistant to the President of the United States. Now you're a private citizen. James Earl Carter is no longer president. Ronald Reagan is president. You're a private citizen. And this is classified information. I can't tell you. Now, if we talk about the communists applauding, I applaud that general.
Yeah.
Because the army is supposed to be loyal to the Constitution of the United States, not to Trump, not to Biden, not to Obama, not to Bush, nobody. The Constitution of the United States.
Amen.
If that happens, that is the biggest thing. Now, there are some people, if you read the news, that may be trying to subvert that today. That's a whole other issue. But that's the bottom line. All right. Anyway, coming back now to Iran.
All right, just to follow up while you pause here.
Yes.
Mad.org says lawsuit/evidence on LC for 911.org. I'm really sorry, sir. This is the second super chat he sent me. He was the one who sent out that thing about the grand juries. I don't understand. Do you understand anything about this? I'm very confused.
I have no idea what this is.
I don't know what this is either. I'm sorry.
As the Israelis say, it's Chinese to me. That's the Hebrew, the Hebrew equivalent of it's Greek to me. It's Chinese to me.
Lawsuits
or as the
evidence
French say,
on
it's Hebrew to me.
LC for 911.
That language I do speak.
I actually even went to 911.org, and it's like,
I don't know.
a 911 number, not. I thought it might be a 911 thing. I'm very confused. I'm very confused. I'm sorry, sir. Please go on, Dan.
All right. So, no, what I was saying about Iran is that this deal with Iran is ridiculous. If we keep the screws on Iran, number one, they won't have the money for their terrorism to upset the Middle East. And number two, if things really get crazy, maybe the government will fall there, which would be the best thing in the world for that government to collapse.
But here's my question on that. Every time a government collapses in the Middle East, it seems like it's replaced by a bigger, scarier head. It's almost like, it's like you take a movie, the sequel is always going to be bloodier, gorier. That's what it feels like with these.
Not in this situation. Not in this situation. Because these guys are, for religious reasons, dedicated. All right, Yamaturo, yes. Oh, thank you.
So he said he had you in zero. He calls you best history teacher of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Anyway, the bottom line is that I believe that if there's unrest, certainly there, it makes it much more difficult for them to upset other states and other governments. Now, one of the reasons for the Abrahamic Accords is because of the fear of Iran. And the question, of course, would be what happens if Iran is removed as a threat? What's going to be then? That's another issue. But the bottom line is empowering Iran is stupid. Politically, it's stupid. Economically, it's not necessary if we don't start draconian efforts to cut oil production in America, which is empowering Russia. We can go on down the whole line it's doing there. That's another thing that I don't want to start talking about climate change. Suffice it to say that when it gets cold, historically, people have starved and people have died. And when it's warm, there were more production of food and people lived longer and fewer people died from disease. Now, I'm sure some of them will argue, well, that's before we have all the medicine and all this stuff we have. But the bottom line of it, the bottom line of this is I don't believe it too much. I obviously too much climate change is no good. What?
Can I sidetrack by asking you a question that I was asked to me about what you would that was asked to me by Robert Barnes, who's a big fan of yours. He enjoys listening to you, and he's referenced you to me in conversation. He's referenced you to in conversations, both to me and in discussing this channel, and he's referenced you a few times, and so we were talking philosophically about what's appropriate for justice. And we were talking in the context of criminal defense attorneys. And he asked me what you would say about the position I took. So this is like sort of a question of morality. And so I was talking about criminal defense attorneys And I was basically saying that they're all big subscribers. Virtually all of them seem to be very big subscribers to the notion that it's better to free 99 guilty men than convict one innocent man.
I remember this. I remember listening to you on this. Yes.
Right. So my position is not in agreement with that. And I went through the various reasons why I don't believe in it. I think that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and then we talk about the danger to society that comes from freeing 99 potentially terrible people, dangerous people. That I don't really understand that philosophy. As far as it's fun. I didn't say this, so you can free that. So instead, we're going to free all 100, not convict that innocent man. And now he's going to get killed, but instead of being in jail, he could be killed by one of those other 99 men you free.
It's very nice philosophically.
So my question is, what your position is?
I believe doesn't go along with you.
So Thomas says what?
The Gemara basically, when it comes to capital offense, it has to be two witnesses are warning the guy when he commits the murder that they're going to go report on him and he's going to get executed. I mean, who's
going to say it's almost impossible to ever? Saying it's almost impossible to.
Well, they said that one court that did this convicted someone in 70 years was known as a hanging court. I mean, not hanging.
No, I understand what you're saying.
A killing court. What? But anyway.
Yeah. Right. But my response back to that though is that doesn't mean they just let the guy wander around free.
No, they had other ways of executing besides the regular way.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So that's not really.
I don't want to start with this. I'm not going to quote the Gemara now. All right.
No, I understand that. But I'm saying I think people misapply that to say, you see, that while Jews never killed anyone under the laws of Judaism, because I'm like, so criminals can go walk free, and I was like, no, they just wouldn't execute that method.
Yeah, there was
you are a rabbi. You are a rabbi, so I'm calling on you because you're.
I think it's on page 85, Aleph A. Oh yeah,
right.
The kippah. You know what that was?
Yeah, they would. I thought it was like an Iron Maiden type of thing, like or they would chain him. I don't know if it's Iron Maiden or they whatchamacallit. They basically locked him away.
No, it was a cage. They basically starved them out. I mean,
yeah, they start
again. It wasn't used very often though, but it was used.
Okay, and my point is they didn't just let criminals like, oh, okay, we're just gonna let criminals just wander free and continue to
you can't let
in their criminality.
That you can't do.
So
any society that lets criminals wander free is going to crash. Now that doesn't mean, though, theoretically, that if someone is not convicted, I mean, I remember the trial of I'm having a mental block. We all know the trial. What's his name? If it doesn't fit, you can't convict. The football player. I can't think of his name. I'm having a mental block. Come on.
Marcel, if the glove don't fit, if the glove doesn't fit,
you can't convict.
Yeah, Johnny Cochran.
That was Cochran. No, what's his name? The football player.
OJ Simpson.
I couldn't think of that. I'm sorry.
The Jews. OJ Simpson.
OJ Simpson. All right. So a lot of people believed that he was guilty, but he wasn't convicted. So actually, they got him on other stuff anyway. But
I wanted to. Someone asks for Mr. Neerman, what was the name of the book you mentioned at the beginning of the stream again, please? Thank you. Do you remember the book?
That book is the 1941, the year that Germany lost the war. The author, I don't remember the exact name. He's Polish, and he's written a number of other books, and it was extremely well footnoted. One of the things I always do when I get these books is I like to see the notes to see how well it was researched. And it looked to me that it was quite well researched. Although I don't know Polish or Russian, it still looked very well done. And I recommend the book. And you can get it.
I see a name here of Andrew Nagorski.
That's right. That's the name. Yeah.
You know how much this book costs?
I didn't pay that. I got a paperback.
I'm just, oh my gosh. Hold on a second.
How much did they say it cost? I got a paperback. What $12 or something, $15.
$12. $12. That's what you, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
$474.
No. Maybe that's for a signed original copy.
Okay. Fine.
Nah.
Yeah, but it's Andrew Nagorski is the. If you want to sign the original copy, I'm sure my father would love that. As if you're looking for a holiday gift for him, I'm sure he would love that.
It's okay. Thank you. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not necessary. All right.
I'm totally joking.
Really, I mean, I have no use for it. Anyway, so I mean, that was basically what I wanted to say tonight. I mean, since you gave me such extensive notice about coming on, in any event, but
I did give my father. I gave my father like 2 hours notice on getting in here. So he was great because I was busy with Vivo. Like right before I went on Vivo, I was like, Dad, I got nothing. And he'd been talking about different topics that he wanted to cover on the show. So I asked him if he was able to come on, and he
prepare them at all.
He just dropped everything. He just dropped everything and popped in here.
Of my head. The bottom line is, if you would like, I would be very happy if you have questions on some of this stuff. Thank you very much.
Yark says, "Good morning, good evening, Mr. Lawgic. It's good men like you who raise moral men like your son here, who help form the backbone of Western civilization. Joe, always remember you got big shoes to fill." Indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If you have any questions about anything that that I can answer, I'd be happy to try.
Yeah, this guy Al Can is like rolling his eyes at super chat interruptions, not realizing that I'm at like 11:10, and I'm really thinking about just like ending the stream because like I dropped this on my dad like totally last minute here, and so like if anyone has questions for my father,
you have questions that I can answer about the Middle East or about Israel or stuff, I'd be happy.
Sky Queen's asking whether can your father say a prayer for us? Good Lawgic. So
well, I pray for everyone. I pray we should have peace. But I'm going to give you now. And now I will say something. I mentioned the word peace. It's a very interesting thing. We're talking about. We had that one already. Okay, all right.
The funniest story about my son.
No, I wasn't talking about peace. All right.
Okay.
There's a group in Israel that are advocating peace, and frankly, peace is a wonderful thing. You don't want war. On the other hand, if you have peace, which is going to lead to more war, then that's not a real peace. So there are a number of people that say by giving the Arabs territory, and of course, if you read what the Arabs say and what they teach their kids, giving them territory gratuitously is not an answer. In any event, so I say someone who wants peace, what is the plural of peace? The plural of peace is pieces. Hamas and all the groups that want to destroy Israel want to take Israel away in pieces, take it down piece by piece. They don't say, "Oh no, destroy it." No, and that's what BDS is pushing for. Now, in Hebrew, the word for peace, which most people know, is shalom. But the word peace, shalom, has a plural. And the plural is shlamim. And shlamim in Hebrew means sacrifices in the temple. In other words, animals that are killed. But in this case, it would mean humans that are killed. So I say that it's wonderful to want peace, but you have to have a proper peace where the security is really fully maintained. And if you want peace too much, you're going to have sacrifices. That's the problem. And that's what's happened in the past. So, and that I believe is true not only for Israel, I believe that's true generally. That if it's the same idea of appeasement. If you want peace too much, look what happened. You had World War II. And besides the Jews that were killed, 40 some odd million people were killed. It's a horrible thing.
I'm going to ask you that he did ask for like a funny story, not the Paro story. Tell different if you have any funny stories about me from you.
And I have to apologize. I'm not thinking of anything really funny about him. I mean, you tell him about the subway, the trip on. I think I told him that already, right?
I don't know what. I don't know what
the trip in London.
Oh,
the London story.
I don't know if that's funny, but.
It's not funny enough. Maybe it's not funny enough.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No. That's not. You didn't expect. You're being thrown on the spot here. If you want to tell the London story, by all means.
I tell them the London story. All right. First of all, you have to understand that Good Logic is very smart. All right. I think he's much smarter than I, but anyway, well, that's a different issue. We had come from Israel to London. We had about a week. Selfridges is a large store there. The Harrods and Selfridges are the two big department stores, the Macy's there. So my wife, my first wife, may she rest in peace, and I wanted to go shopping. They had a little kiddie area, like an arcade area there. So we left him with his he was at this time, was 12, so he was 8. He was 8. Yeah. So he was 8, his sister was 9.
Asteroids. We were playing Asteroid. We were playing
a game. I don't remember Asteroids. You were playing a game there. Yeah. And I gave them money, and we got involved, looking at stuff. I don't remember. We said 20 minutes, half hour, and we were like an hour. So we come there, and my daughter's there, and my eldest son is there. And I go, where is Good Logic? Because I didn't call him Good Logic, but where is he? So they go, he left. Says, what? What are you talking about? He left. So I said, what? Where'd he go? Where he left, we don't know. So first of all, we had to make announcements in the store. We told the whole store, where is he? Where is he? Finally, we got the idea of calling. We're staying in a boarding house. So we called up Mrs. Yolson. She rest in peace. She was the owner of the boarding house. She said, yeah. What happened to him? What did you do? He came here. I said, what do you mean he came here? He came here. He's in the house here. I said, all right, don't let him leave. And we're coming home. So we come home to your house, the boarding house. And first of all, I see
there was 2 trains on the underground. I still remember I'd take the black line to the red line.
Right, yeah. There were two lines on the underground. Anyone's been in London, the subways there are not like New York. He figured out the map. He took the subways, and these trains come speeding through, and everything is on the wrong side of what you think, because everything's on the left over there. In fact, I know cases of people who've been run over there and killed. And he lost his yarmulke. So what he did was he goes into a Jewish bookstore, and I think he had £1, which even then was not. It's owner of the bookstore to get a yarmulke, in which they had yarmulkes for £2 and he only had £1, and he negotiated the whole thing when he came back there. So he was up to things even then. Let's put it like this, and quite assertive. And but he was a good man. He's a good man. And I'm very proud of him.
I didn't know if you were coming back. Okay, you said
you didn't
back in like 15, 20 minutes. I did not know if you were coming back. I waited 40, 45 minutes. I was like, maybe they forgot about us. I'm just going to go back to the boarding house. That was basically my attitude. I was very proud of myself.
Forgot about you. Yeah, I really
I was very proud of myself that when my yarmulke blew into the train tracks there in the underground, that I did not. I thought about going in, and I was like, I don't think that mommy and daddy would be happy about me jumping in there. So I decided I'm not going to go there. It was a real thought I had in my head, because I was like, I need to have my yarmulke. What am I supposed to do? I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to go in. I'm not supposed to do that. So there you go. Well bred.
Precocious of you, yes. Or sagacious.
Yes.
All right. Anyway, yes. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So someone asked what you think
the audience the best, unless if they would say, I'll try to answer something, but if not, I wish you well.
Hold on a second. Hold on, Dad. I got more questions for you.
You got questions for me? Okay.
Yeah. So someone asked, how did Jews, including myself, square the circle of the Sicarii who did assassinations with following the Torah? It always made me confused. I don't even know what the Sicarii are. Do you?
Well, yeah, sure. These were guys. In fact, some people claim that the people on Matzada were also members of that group. They went around and they murdered people. They were wrong. You know, I always say something about this.
Yeah, but go. So, do you have an answer to that, or no?
Well, let me finish this.
That's what I was asking you.
A lot of people, the people. Well, Sicarii in Latin means just the stab with knives, the curved knives, like that. There are a lot of people who do things that are wrong and say, "Well, how do you square this?" They're wrong. If someone prays badly, that doesn't mean you're supposed to pray badly. If someone lies, that doesn't mean you're supposed to lie.
Even if
And,
they're wearing,
we're
even
not
if they're wearing a
perfect.
big
None of us
yarmulke
are
or
perfect.
you know, they
But
look
these
like a
guys were
rabbi.
really off. These guys were really off base, and they created a number of issues at the time when they existed. Absolutely. So the other thing, 10th man. Excuse me one second.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
the concept of Israel using the
10th
10th
man.
command.
Okay.
What is
The
that?
quorum
Is
is
about
10.
it's a minion? Oh, you're talking about minion.
Yeah,
Okay.
10th man is minion. Right. A quorum is 10 people because we know there were 10 people when, in the case of the selling of Joseph, there were 10 people, and 10 people had, and also when the path, they did the wrong thing. And 10 is a quorum because when 10 say something, it has a great amount of power, either correctly or incorrectly. For example, when we say grace after meals, if we have 10 people, we add the name of God, which we would not normally at the beginning of the saying the grace. And we need 10 to have a quorum, 10 people to pray together makes a quorum, and that permits certain prayers that otherwise would not be allowed if one were praying individually.
I believe it also is a reference. The 10 is referred to as the number of spies who spoke ill of the land of Israel.
That's what I said. The 10.
Oh,
I alluded to that. Maybe I wasn't clear.
Right. Okay, no, sir. Okay. Next question up here for you is: War and peace isn't activity versus inactivity. If you have to worry about your family's safety, you're not at peace.
Right.
By the time people take up arms, they've already been at war for a long time. That's an interesting thought.
I think that's not wrong, certainly. Interesting. Your name, Durnow?
Durna. No, it's Durna 180.
Oh, Durna 180. Durna, I'm sorry, I don't
Durna
know.
1884.
Okay, 1804. Anyway,
yeah, I don't know.
So in any event, that's not wrong. When people take up arms, normally it's because they feel threatened, and that you could say anyone threatened is at war, and that is what I was saying initially. That society reaches that stage, it's in a bad state, and one way to stop it is to crush rioting with a mighty hand.
That's not my mother. That's my father's wife. My mother passed 5 years ago, and my father remarried. 7
She
years
passed
ago.
7 years
7
ago.
years ago.
October, and we are married 6 years, God willing, in 6 weeks.
Right. So my father remarried after my mother passed. So, thank you. Yeah, he's very.
Thank you.
lucid.
Thank you for that. I pray also.
Okay.
Even though I forgot about OJ Simpson. Okay. Anyway,
That's fine. That's fine. You were really great. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up a little bit early tonight, only because I do have an early day tomorrow. Just a reminder to all of you. First of all, those of you who have subscribed, I told you don't become a member. I don't know if you saw, Dad, that I was telling them they have membership on my channel now. Oh, you see, I can't even talk about it. When I say thank you, Samantha, I'm like, don't become a member. I mean, the only reason to become a member is if you're worried that you're going to get removed from my channel. But if you're following me every day, you'll notice if you get removed from my channel. So whatever. I'm just saying, I think it's a waste of money. It gives you like a little beaver when you talk. Like, what does that do?
What happens if you get removed? Let's say I get removed. What do I do besides calling you up and yelling?
Well, you could just add me back. But the point is, if you're not if you're not following me every day, you're not going to know that. You won't notice you get removed. You just assume that I haven't posted in a while. Or you're getting other notifications from other people, so you sort of forget about me. That's sort of like what the whole agenda is there. Yarrick says, how do you keep a yarmulke on? And is there a different method for when you're bald?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a very cute question. Okay.
Okay.
I got to tell him the answer to this. He's going to get a good laugh. Okay. First of all, I don't have it, but the Hebrew word for yarmulke is a kippah. All right. So some guy who's an enterprising businessman came up with a thing called kippon, Kippon, which is supposed to keep yarmulkes on. I assume it's some sort of a glue which you could stick on here. But
suction cups for bald people.
Yeah, right. Anyway, I don't know what it is. I never bought it. But the bottom line is that a yarmulke, unless it's new and it has a very hard inside and it's curved, usually stays on, and sometimes it doesn't. So you
when you're 3 years old is when you start wearing yarmulke, and it just becomes like riding a bike. You don't even realize you're keeping it on, but you're naturally balancing your head in a way that'll tend to stay on unless a steady wind blows. That's really the answer. It doesn't matter if you're bald or not. It just sort of, your head becomes naturally trained to like not roll.
Well, some people use bobby pins to keep their yarmulkes on when they're, but not someone such as I. I don't have enough hair for that.
Anyway. Appreciate your answer about Sakari. I always thought they were zealots who just claimed to be Jewish. So,
no, they were Jewish. No, these guys were Jewish.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's okay. By the way, Samantha, you don't have to apologize. You don't have to apologize. You did good. You did good. I just warned. I said that if people are going to throw their money away like that, I'm gonna throw my money away on a Jeep. So, that's just a warning. It's a warning. So, and I know that all the people on the left are very afraid of people buying Jeeps because the CO2 emissions. Are you worried about climate change? Do you have concerns about climate change?
I told you, I'm not going to say the whole thing is deceitful. I can't say that, but I think it's overwrought, and I think if you're going to destroy your economy over it, you're crazy. All right, I mean, and raising the price of oil. This
is what people want to hear about from you. You're Middle East.
All right,
you're Middle East. You're like the mullah of Middle East. And
I know about that, but anyway,
I'm saying for conservative talk radio or talk podcast or talk YouTube, you are the mullah of the Middle East. And with that, I ask you, rising gas prices and things of that nature. I mean,
it's bad.
Okay. Do you think it's related? Do you think
bad.
Do you think the Middle East? Yeah.
Look, it's bad for America, first of all. Absolutely. Right. All right. Now, it's bad for America because, it's very interesting. Your stepmother had on, we don't have a TV normally, but we're in a place we have a TV. So she had it on, and someone on, I think, Channel 7 was talking and saying, well, the president said that the oil, it's not the oil, it's the corporations that are trying to make money. So I explained to her the following. I said, look, if you're in business and something costs you $1, you want to make profit, so maybe in your business you double cost, so it'll be $2. But if it now costs $1.20 because of the gas or whatever the cost of production is, because oil is up, so now you're going to charge $2.40. That's not you're making more profit. You have to double. You have a formula how you conduct your business. It's not. It's part of the cost, and that is the way it works in business. And it's better for the economy if oil is less. Now, if you want to discourage people from using oil, obviously you want to raise the price, which is why the day he became president, he shut down the pipeline. But that obviously has many other ramifications besides the loss of employment to those people and other things. And when that happened, I was coming back I had gone to Florida, and I passed the same gas stations, and they already were 25 cents a gallon more than they've been when we were driving south. So the bottom line is that rising oil prices are not good for the economy. They are inflationary. Now you're going to see money is going to get harder. That's going to pinch back on the economy. The FED, the Fed announced today. So there's going to be a number of things that are going to happen. And inflation is bad. But you do have to do correction, and they're going to do some correction. It's generally not a good thing when oil prices keep going up. And,
do you think Middle Eastern countries take advantage of?
To some extent, although the Saudis now, they cut back on oil purposely, they also have another issue because they are beginning to realize when they're long-term planning, that their oil is not inexhaustible. That's one of the reasons that the Saudis now in their colleges and universities are training people to do other things. They're trying to begin to diversify their economy. Why does Hanukkah move dates? Okay, is it lunar? It's lunar. The Jewish calendar is lunar. It's a lunar
thing,
calendar.
an older
Want me to explain it? I can explain it, but you'll never remember it. It's complex.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. I mean, you want, I'll explain it. I mean, but
he asked the question.
Don't pay, but send them a note. I mean, it's a 19-year cycle. In the let's see, what's okay? No, it's third year, sixth year, eighth year. Have an extra month. The 11th, the 14th, and these 11, 14, 17, and 19 have extra months. Those are the ones with the extra months. Sorry.
Daddy.
Yes.
You're shuckling.
I'm sorry. I'm tired.
It's okay. I know. No, I and as my father was saying, it's a 19-year cycle, so it's a lunar cycle, which basically means that every month is 29 and a quarter days. That's how long a lunar month is. Roughly almost exactly 29 and a quarter days. Because of that, with 12 months in a year, a lunar year is only 354 days instead of the 365 and a quarter days that a solar year is. That being the case, each year the lunar calendar is adjusted that it falls back 11 days earlier than it was before. So if the first day of the Jewish month of Kislev comes out on the 15th, were to come out on the 15th of December, which never does, it usually would be later than that. But if the month of Kislev would come out on the 15th of December, a year later, it would come out 11 days earlier on the 4th of December. So, and the following year, it would come out 11 days later. It would come out on like the 23rd day of November. Goes back 11 days. Now, the Muslims, when they use the lunar calendar, they basically work it that they will just keep going back 11 days. 11 days, 11 days, 11 days, 11 days. So that, if you look at when Ramadan is, which they have different names for their months, but when they look at Ramadan is, and it falls out at a certain point in their lunar calendar, whatever day it starts in this year, it's going to start 11 days earlier next year. And in 17 years, it'll start 180 days earlier. Because since
34 years, their calendar, 34 years roughly to go around this.
To go around the whole thing. So what ends up happening... So yeah, but so they'll have some of their holidays that will be whatever holidays they have in the summer now will be 18 years now will be in the winter, and vice versa, because the calendar is constantly moving. The Jewish lunar calendar tries to adjust for that because we believe that our holidays are supposed to be seasonal, that Passover is always supposed to come out in the spring. In order to accommodate for that, they added in the 19-year cycle, every 19 years, we add an extra month of 29 and a quarter day, 29 days, 7 times. So it ends up coming out that our calendar will end up being, so it's like every 3 or 4 years there's an extra month, or less than that. Every 2.5 years or so, to 3 years, there's an extra month that's
7
thrown
times in 19 years. That's
7 out of 19 is like basically 2.5.
The lunar month is 29 and a half, not a quarter days long.
But thank you for correcting me. Yes, you're correct. You are correct. So it's 20. Thank you for correcting me on that. This is why I say things in front of my father. So if I mistakenly say anything, I know he will correct me without hesitation, and that's what makes him awesome. So
I don't know about that.
Well, that's one thing. Anyway, so because of that, because of our extra month that we throw in 7 times every few years, we throw an extra month. It ends up keeping our holidays that Hanukkah will always fall out in the winter, Passover will always come out in the spring, and various holidays come out seasonally during a certain time of year, but it's not aligned with the solar calendar where it's going to come out on the same way. Your Christmas will come out every year based on a solar calendar on the 25th of December every single year. Ours is going to just adjust, being earlier or later compared to the solar calendar. So that I think that was I just wanted to run through that, and I figured you were going to give a whole history lesson, and I don't know. I was just trying to spare you from having to do that. Dad. So I appreciate. I mean, it was that.
Okay, it's fine. Is what you said correct?
Yeah, you're saying. By the way, legendary scrub. Jewish people discuss math. LOL. Throughout the ages, Jewish scholars were very the way they could understand interplanetary movements and stars and seasons and calculate, because the calendar we have now, that is like, it's down to like microseconds as to its accuracy. When was this first of all? When was Hillel's
358 CE.
358 literally going back. So we're literally going back 1,750 years.
1,660 years.
1660, yeah. 16. You go back 1,600 years before the Muslims created our numeric system of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 counting.
Well, actually, the Hindus sent it to them, but it's before they had that, and also the Christian calendar was off because the Christians used the Julian calendar, and the Julian calendar has a leap year every 4 years. But
I can't even figure out how they do it. I can't even use a sundial. I can't even figure out how to use a sundial. All right, so we're coming back to this 9/11 truther here.
Yeah,
we're coming back to this 9/11 truther. I'll give him his $5. Lawyers committee for 9/11 inquiry have damning list of evidence. Nothing wrong about giving facts about what happened. Okay. All right. I'm not sure if that's I don't know if that's a Jew thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what that's even supposed to say, but there you go. I threw that out there. I gave you your read. I'm not really into the whole 9/11 trutherism. It's really not what my channel is about. So I'm not going to give it much more than that. Anyway, I think I've been trying to let my father go. And he's been very patient and very strong. But I think it's just I think it's time that we're going to actually close up here. I will be back. I'm going to be trying to drop some videos also about other legal questions related to
wish you well, all the best. Have happy holidays, a happy new year. Only good things, all of you. And we should all be safe.
Thank you. And I'll be back. You'll see me tomorrow. I'll be dropping vids on what's happening during the course of the trial, because tomorrow we get right back into testimony. So till you hear from me next, and I'll be back streaming, God willing, 10 p.m. tomorrow. I wish you stay safe, take care of yourselves, and Godspeed.